Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. I'm Dr. Michelina, and we are talking about how to choose life. All the places where we can grow and learn and shift our reality. We've talked about mental, emotional, physical, intellectual. Let's talk now about some of the more difficult, right? And that is sexual, then we'll get into financial. When we think about sex, this is a hard one for most people because there's basically two paradigms around sex, right? And for men, there's a different paradigm than there is for women. When we are looking at sex from a masculine point of view, the more the merrier, right? Men are biologically hardwired to want to sow their seed. They want to have sex. They are lustier in a lot of ways. They are physically stimulated, visually stimulated. And so men are hardwired for sex. However, too many men are preoccupied with sex on the physical realm, the physical capacity, and are not at all aware enough of the spiritual connection that comes with sexual experience. And so sex is a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual act. And men, more often than women, feel as though they can separate it, right? They're like, well, I don't need to have feelings to have sex with somebody. That is true of men. They don't. Women, we tend to need to, and or when we have sex, we are releasing hormones that make us fall in love, right? And so women in sex is a very different game than men in sex. Now, sex at its core is among the most natural thing that people can do, right? How'd you get here? Oh, your parents had sex. Right. Right. Like, it doesn't really get more natural than the act of having sex. However, there's a lot of shame, perversion, and stigma around sex. So with men, the more they have, the more they're applauded. With women, the more they have, obviously, the more they're denigrated. Because we want our women to be virtuous, and we want our men to be reformed rakes. So what ends up happening with sex as a concept is that we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what to do with it. And it's like one of the most scandalous things around. I often tell my friends, I'm like, it is better to be a drug addict than it is to be a sex offender. Any day. There's redemption in society for a drug addict. There is no redemption for somebody who's labeled as a sex offender. There's just not. And so what we do, for the most part, is demonize and vilify sex on one hand, and then sell it and promote it and market it and champion it on another, right? And so we have really done a huge disservice to ourselves with our sex. Huge disservice. Because now we trade it in a way that devalues it. We're getting to a place where we're putting on a pedestal women who are sexually promiscuous in such a way that it devalues the sexual experience and it disconnects the sexual experience. Sex is meant to be a physical experience, right? And so now we've got so much virtual electronic sex that it's automatically causing a kind of a barrier. And I say all of this because actually, if we're thinking about how do we choose life in the sexual realm, versus how do we move? Are we moving toward the death energy? Any online sexual anything is the death energy. That's death energy. Why? Sex is supposed to be physical. So when you've got it through a screen, you can already know that you're sowing to the death energy. That's not real sex. That's pseudo sex. We live in a society that has a lot of pseudo sex, right? Porn industry, OnlyFans industry. It's an easy way to make a quick buck if you're a woman who's relatively attractive. You don't even need to be fully attractive. You can just be moderately attractive and still. And so we in this society sow to death energy in the sexual arena a lot. A lot. Because real sex, and how do you sow to life in sex, is it something that is supposed to be highly valued. It is not a tradable commodity. That's how you sow to life. It's why people don't actually want women to have high body counts. Sex is supposed to be a sacred thing. And if you want to sow to life in the sexual realm, you treat it as such. You treat it as a sacred thing. Most people don't. We don't. And I'm not saying save yourself to marriage. I'm not saying do it. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is be mindful with who you give it to. Now, as someone who has sowed death energy in the sexual realm, I can tell you it is not productive. As somebody who has a sentence for sending pictures, I can tell you, when you sow to death energy, you reap death in return. A life sentence is basically a death sentence, right? And so when you are thinking about sex energy, the act of having sex, all the sex things, how we can sow to life is by holding it in a higher standard, holding it at a higher value, not just giving it away. And that's for men too, even though men, it's championed for men to give it away, and there is something to men giving it away, right? This is why we have a lot of broken families. Men and women do not value sex in the regard that they need to. We've got a lot of broken families out there, a lot of fatherless families, a lot of single parent households, because you're having sex with people that you don't care about. You're not holding it in high enough esteem. It's would I be cool to raise a child with this person? Sure, I'll let them have sex with me, or I will have sex with them. Otherwise, don't have sex with them, right? That's not how we look at it. But if we did, we would be sowing to life. Because at the end of the day, sex is not for your pleasure, it's for reproductive purposes. Oh, well, sex is pleasurable. True. And if you want to have pleasurable sex, you're gonna want to have protected sex. I don't care how you get protected, but be smart about it. And also, when I say protected, I mean protect your energy, because it is a transmission of energy. So if you want to sow to life energy in the sexual space, you're going to regard it differently. You're going to regard it as a more sacred, explorative, important act than just, something I want to do because I feel lusty, And so, what we do with sex, like what we do with money, which we'll talk about, is we over idolize it and undervalue it. And then we sow to the death energy, right? And so sex is a creative force at the end of the day. Sexual energy is a creative energy at the end of the day. The whole point of sex is to create, procreate, recreate something new, right? New little tiny human. So that energy is something that we want to hold in high regard. You look around, you can see that we do not. Like, OnlyFans is such a good example of this, because I will show you my vagina for $3.99. Like, no. Why? You know? And so when we devalue our sex, our ability to have sex, our sexual energy, it doesn't actually end well, because you're sowing to death energy. And so you reap death energy. You have to do more. You have to try to sustain that. So the importance of reframing the concept of sex is not to be understated. When we shame sex, we're actually sowing to death energy. When we become embarrassed about sex, death energy. It's supposed to be something that is explorative and fun and progressive. And because of the weird emphasis we put on it, every person I know has a sexual wound. They have a shame and a guilt around sex. Every person I've ever talked to, man or woman. There's a pressure, there's a shame, there's a I don't want to say volatility, but kind of. And all of that is sowing to death energy in the sexual arena. If we really want to sow to life in the sex arena, gotta change the way you look at it. Gotta hold it in a higher regard. Not put it on a pedestal, but put it as a high value commodity. And so that is the opposite of what society does, right? Society is sowing to death energy in sex all the time. Over-sexualizing children, over-sexualizing adults, over-sexualizing everyone. Sex sells, Victoria's Secret models, comparisons, the thief of joy, social media, AI, the way society deals with sex, especially Western society, is a travesty. It's sowing to death energy all the time. But that's not shocking, because culture and society wants to keep us in bondage. It wants to keep us in death energy. So it will take anything and everything it can to try to do that. Our food, our media, you name it, our sex, our money, everything. Okay? It's not a conspiracy. That is a fact. What benefits society? Healthy, empowered individuals? No, of course not. Weak-minded, weak-willed, enslaved people better a society. Okay? And so, and by better a society, I mean keep the people who are on top and keep the people who are on bottom. That's what slavery is. And so one of the ways in which we do that is by entrapping sexually. And so, the OnlyFans industry keeps men so weak, keeps women so disempowered, so sad, right? And so no self-worth, no self-respect. We got dudes jerking their dicks off in front of a screen instead of going and having sex with their partners. It's sad. That's sad. It's beta male stuff, right? We have women who are performing. They're taking their sex and they're making it a performance for money. Cyber prostitution. It's sad because it's sowing to death energy. It's sowing to death energy. And so when we take what sex is supposed to be, fun, explorative, natural, and we pervert it and we make it transactional and we make it performative and we make it objectified, you're sowing to death energy. And that's what media has done in every way, shape, and form where sex is concerned. So we're sowing to death in the sexual realm. And so it really, the change has to come from our own awareness. It's not going to come from society. It comes from our own, like, taking our power back and being like, no. And this is something, so for me, right, as an example, it would be so easy. It would be literally so easy for me to make an OnlyFans and put my body out there. It would be so easy, right? Because I already have a sex offense. Like, who cares? I do. I care, right? That's why I don't do it. It's like your own moral compass has to come in to play. That's how you get your power back, one little decision at a time, holding the line. And so, yeah, of course, sex is something we can all leverage. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So, shifting your belief system, shifting your reality about sex is an important thing to do in order to sow to life in your sexual growth place. And the way you view sex, which we'll talk about tomorrow, is also very parallel to how you make money. Sex and money, love and money, go hand in hand. So if you're like, wow, my sex life sucks and my money life sucks, don't be shocked. Because it will. What you think about sexually is what you get financially. And so if you, because they're both just essentially ways in which we connect with the world or with someone else or other people. All that to say that sex is obviously complex. It's a complex topic. And it really, the way in which people think about sex highlights their emotional maturity most of the time. We have a lot of very emotionally immature people, sexually immature people. And it's one of those things, sex is one of those things that highlights a deficit mentality faster than almost anything else. I've seen it a lot. And so, with all that to say, how we think about sex, when we shift that, we can sow to life there. But it is definitely a battle because we have a society that propagates death energy in it. Not surprising, right? So, all this to say that sexual energy is a creative, fun, explorative energy that needs to be held in high value and high commodity to be properly sown to life, right? When you look at it that way, you can act in ways that are more fun and explorative and connected. If you look at sex like it's an objectifying, transactional, shallowly pleasurable thing, you show up in life a lot like that. You interact with people a lot like that. So, all that to say, shift your reality around sex, and you will also shift your reality on a lot of different things. With that being said, I hope that this is helpful. This one is always one that I tread cautiously with because so many people have like sexual trauma. So I try hard not to get into too many graphics in that, like, sex can be graphic. So hopefully nobody's too triggered by this, but if you are, apologies. Means you probably have some work to do there. But I will be bringing this series more to you over the next couple weeks. I hope you're enjoying it, and I will see you on the next video.